So let's take a trip down memory lane. We're going to talk about the Nintendo DSi and see how this specific console holds up in 2023. Now, what's very, very insane is that, in my opinion, I kind of do think that the Nintendo DSi was probably one of the biggest changes from one console to the other that Nintendo has ever done. And I still look at a console like the Nintendo DSi, and I think this is where Nintendo kind of peaked in terms of console revisions, probably until the Nintendo Switch. I think the DSi was a very, very good way for Nintendo to continue to capitalize on that console without having to go ahead and make a crazy big successor and totally rebrand the console and change everything up. And I do think that the lessons that Nintendo kind of took with the DSi, they kind of didn't approach with the Wii U. And I think they tried to do the exact same thing, make an iterative console, run off the, success of the previous console, but try to give a few changes and a few things here and there. And I don't think Nintendo did a great job with the Wii U, but the DSi, it brought a big, massive change. And to start off with, the Nintendo DS Lite, which was right before this specific console, was one of, if not the most impactful console that I've ever owned. I was a very, very big Nintendo fan. I played basically so many Nintendo games as a kid, and the DS Lite was almost like the first console that I had that I wasn't sharing. It was like my own console. And with the DS Lite, it was a beautiful looking console. I was able to play all my DS games. I was able to play all my Game Boy Advance games. And then basically a little bit after owning it, the Nintendo DSi actually ended up coming out. And what was so insane to me with that console was that Nintendo basically brought so many crazy things with this console that I still look at. And this is almost like the perfect console for that moment. And what I mean by that is, before there was like a big massive wave of like smartphone games, before there was a lot of crazy things like that, this was a very good portable console that kind of competed very well against the PSP during that moment. Now, just a few things that the DSi actually brought that the Nintendo DS Lite actually didn't have. For one, the cameras. Although I was not, going to be taking photos at all probably on this thing, it was so cool to have a camera on the front and the back on this console. Funny enough, even phones during this moment didn't even have front cameras. This specific console from 2008, almost in 2009, basically had a front camera and a back camera. A lot of phones didn't even have it until like 2010 or 2011. So that's an insane thing right there. But on top of that, this thing also brought a little bit newer of a design. So it was kind of like this matte texture versus the DS Lite's kind of reflective material. I was a big fan of the DS Lite, and I still think the DS Lite looks overall better than the DSi. But I will say the DSi looks a little bit more, I don't know if professional is the word, but it looks a little bit more seamless, like minimalistic in a way. But I still think the DS Lite, Nintendo did just an amazing job with that console. Another thing that Nintendo did here was they did actually bring the SD card slot with this specific console. So they were able to go ahead and basically bring in an actual SD card. That way, if you wanted to go ahead and expand the storage, you could put games on that console, save data, I think, music, videos, probably whatever else you wanted to do. You could go ahead and store that on an actual SD card on your console. So that was another really big change. The original Nintendo DS and the DS Lite did not have those types of capabilities. Basically, all your data was saved either in the built-in storage of that DS Lite or the original DS, or it was going into that game card, which for a majority of things was basically going there. But this isn't even scratching the surface. The biggest change of all time was the software. With the original DS and the DS Lite, it was a very, very bare bones piece of software. It was basically just choose the game, Picto Chat, DS Remote Play, probably some other things, and that was basically it, and your save data of the game. That was basically all you were getting on that specific console. You had to have a game in order to even do anything with that console. Even if you did remote play, you still have to be, you could only play games on that console. That was it. You had to go to a place that had a game or get it shipped to you, and that was it. The PSP, I think, did it really, really good during this moment because it was like a multimedia console. You could watch videos. You can go on the internet. You could basically do whatever you wanted to on a phone that we have nowadays on something like a PSP during that moment. The DS Lite didn't have that. The DSi basically refined all of that and basically gave us an actual piece of software that we could actually go ahead and utilize. So with the DSi, we were able to go ahead and basically not only install different apps and do different things, but we had the DSiWare shop. Now what this was that it was a piece of software that was basically like an app store. we could go ahead and basically use that and, go on it, install different applications, download different games. We could go ahead and buy games from the DSiWare shop into our DSi wirelessly. Those kinds of things are what set the precedent and I think the framework for Nintendo to kind of continue on and just kill it in terms of, their software for the most part. Although their software is not like amazing right now, it still is a really nice touch that they were able to go ahead and bring in that type of software. Because when you go ahead and see that, not only the hardware changed up like crazy, bringing the cameras, newer type of design, SD card slot, and, some other things, so we'll talk about in a second, it's still a super nice thing where they improve the software like crazy. The difference between a DS Lite and a DSi, I think, is a bigger difference than like a DSi and a 3DS. And I think it's probably a bigger difference than like a 3DS and a Switch. Of course, the Switch is more powerful, the better games and all that stuff, but just the difference from the software standpoint and the hardware improvements, that I would say was probably the biggest difference from the DS Lite to the DSi. Because before that, it's almost like comparing like a flip phone to the first iPhone. Like, of course, the first iPhone isn't usable today. Like, it's very slow and it, can't do anything. But the difference between those two is probably a bigger difference than the first iPhone and the latest iPhone that we have, to be honest. So that's kind of how I see it here. Hopefully it's not a horrible example. I'll probably look back and think that's a bad example. However, not everything was perfect with the Nintendo DSi. And the only thing that kind of irked me a little bit was the Game Boy Advance slot kind of being removed. And it didn't irk me as much as maybe like other things that I've had with other consoles. But that was kind of something weird because I did actually own a lot of Game Boy Advance games. I had, I think, Crash Bandicoot Huge Adventure. That was a great one. I had the Crash Bandicoot other one. I had another Spyro the Dragon game. I think it was like Ice Season and Fire Season, something like that. I think there was a Mario game I had one time too. There's a Jurassic Park game I had, and those types of games were not backwards compatible with the DSi. This kind of started the trend of some games being removed, like not removed, but the backwards compatibility kind of being removed on some consoles. But I think with the Nintendo DS, the whole entire lineup with the original DS all the way up to the 3DS, I think Nintendo did a great job at pretty much confirming and keeping things going and making all those games compatible for every single generation of console. So that's something I've always preferred and liked. They could have easily, when they dropped the 3DS, only like support games for the 3DS onwards. But no, they made that, game cartridge the same, and they made all the games backwards compatible, which gives me hope for the future. And I think Nintendo can do almost the same thing that they did with the Nintendo DSi with the Nintendo Switch. Instead of them going through and rebranding the whole entire Switch, they could easily just keep selling an iterative console and an iterative model of the Nintendo Switch year after year after year. And they could make a ton of money that way. They've hit a home run with the, Switch, just like how they hit a home run with the DS and, the original DS and DS Lite. So I think there's still a lot of room for them to go ahead and basically go down that direction and improve their DS and improve their Switch lineup. So overall, I look at a console like the Nintendo DSi, and I'm not only a massive fan of the DSi, but I still think there's a little bit of Nintendo DSi stuff in almost every console Nintendo's made since then. You look at it, even if you look at the DSi software, the Switch software looks more like the DSi software than it looks like the Wii software, in my opinion. So that kind of covers it up there. I'd love to hear your thoughts about this. Let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More important than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.